Yes.
Okay. I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask everybody to rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'm going to welcome Rebecca Olson to come forward. She has a new hire to introduce to us.
Hello, good evening. Tonight I bring forth a recommendation for hire of Miss Heather Beck as a Great Start Readiness lead teacher at the Little Hornets Preschool. Heather has her bachelor's degree in education from Central Michigan University and holds a Michigan standard teaching certificate with a birth through kindergarten endorsement. Ms. Beck is very familiar with the school system and has held a variety of different roles throughout our neighboring districts. MTSS aide, paraprofessional, assistant teacher, lead teacher. Her most recent position as a lead teacher in a preschool classroom is what drew her to Little Hornets. Ms. Beck has engaged in a pretty rigorous interview process, which included a first and second round panel interview process, as well as a student engagement piece. And throughout that process, she really emerged as the strongest candidate. Her philosophy of education, respect for young children and that early years learning really shined through. Her knowledge of what appropriate preschool education is really fit our philosophy at Little Hornets. It was even more solidified when we talked to her references, and they really elaborated on her strong work ethic, her genuine respect in her interactions with both children, her colleagues, as well as families. So it is with strong confidence that I bring forth this recommendation for hire.
Do you have any questions? All right, I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion that the Williamston Community Schools Board of Education hire Heather Beck to be a lead teacher for the Great Start to Readiness program.
Do I have a second, Dave? Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Congratulate our new teacher. Next, this is a time for citizen comment, and there is none. Next, celebrations. Adam.
Good evening, members of the board. Just a couple points to note tonight. First, as posted on the website, Courtney Smith, who is a young fives teacher at Discovery Elementary, was selected as a Michigan Science Teachers Association Fellow, one of 24 educators selected throughout the state of Michigan. This continues that same focus, and I think is another example of how the district exudes leadership in the STEAM fields. Obviously, S in STEAM being science. And this will allow Courtney to participate in a lot of cutting-edge focused science professional development over the course of the next year with other leaders in science education throughout the state. So congratulations to her for being selected for that very prestigious award or opportunity. A lot of athletics pieces as fall sports are wrapping up and a lot of accomplishments. And I don't want to list them all because I'll miss some, but I know Mr. Polson will be here next month to provide you an update on fall sports and a preview of winter sports. Boys soccer, probably one of the notable ones. They advanced to the state semifinals a week ago, a very strong conclusion to their season. And still going on, just over the weekend, girls swim won the CAC Red Conference Championship and had a relay team qualify for states and also set the pool record at that event. So a lot more with athletics, but Mr. Paulson will give you a detailed explanation of that. And then one final note, I know it's a tradition in Williamston, but it's always one of my most notable benchmarks of the year was the Halloween celebration at the elementary campus. But it also kind of permeates out throughout the rest of the community where we have staff members engaging downtown during trick-or-treating with the businesses that previous weekend. Different theme days and staff spirit days, student spirit days at the other buildings. But it's always fantastic having the marching band come down and lead the little kids out, which seems like a never-ending procession of elementary students throughout that parade route. But another great example of the school district and the community and kind of that partnership, and another example of what makes Williamston such a great place. So those are celebrations for this evening. Pending any questions?
All right, moving on to our educational update. Should I just turn it over to Mr. West, or would you? Okay. Am I in your way?
No, you're good. Just trying to see if the clicker works, or should I just tell you next?
It worked in rehearsal.
You can tell me next if it's.
Maybe I'll just yell at you next if
That's
you don't
fine.
mind.
Don't look at me, because I don't have it.
Well, thanks for having me here tonight. My name is Nick West. I'm a CPA at Manor Costerison. Just going to be going over the fiscal year 2024 audit for you all. I met with the finance committee about a week and a half ago. We went through in a really in-depth conversation about your financial statements. Going to keep it a little more high level and just kind of hit some of the highlights tonight for you. So I'm going to skip ahead. Very briefly, Manor Costerison, I think you all are aware, I think we've been your auditors for at least the last 4 or 5 years that I've worked with you. So we perform over about 100 district audits annually, though, about 120, I think, which I believe is about first in the state now, and I do about 10 myself. So just jump right into your audit results. So the very beginning of your financial statements, you would find your auditor's report, and in there we express an unmodified or a clean audit opinion. That's the highest opinion that we can provide you as your independent auditors, also consistent with opinions you've received in years past as well. But a great job on the audit this year to everyone involved. Next, we look at, actually, if you want to go back, sorry. I say next, but that's not, that's for my own internal. Next, we looked at your internal controls over financial reporting. Happy to tell you no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies. You also had a single audit this year over your child nutrition cluster, which is essentially your school breakfast and your school lunch. And happy to tell you there, we expressed an unmodified or a clean opinion on that, and we had no findings either. So next slide, please. Very brief snapshot of your balance sheet back on June 30, 2024. A couple things to just highlight here for you. Ended the year general fund assets of about $11.8 million, fund balance of about 7.4, which I'll talk a little bit later. Across all funds, you ended up with just under about $10.9 million worth of fund balance. Next slide, please. And this is your statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance, or your income statement, basically, for school districts. General fund, you had about $27 million worth of revenue against expenditures of 25.5. I got a couple slides here to show you how that compares against years past. Pretty consistent with 2023. That led to a net change and an increase in fund balance of about 1.6 million, which as a percentage of expenditures is about 29% or so as of year end. Last year you had about 22.4. Got a couple slides too that'll kind of highlight some of last year's statewide averages. Last year you were statewide average about 21%, so you're just about average there. If I had to speculate going forward for this fiscal year, you'll probably be a little bit above the average, I would say, of this. Most districts I've worked with have been adding to fund balance this year, and I think that number will probably get up to the mid-20s if I had to speculate, but that won't come out for a couple months. Next slide, please. Looking at your budget to actual comparison, original and final budget, we're calling for an increase in fund balance of around $660,000 to about $725,000. Had a nice positive variance this year that led to that increase. And if we look at your variance percentages, Really on the revenue side, about a 1.2% variance, 2.2 on the expenditures, and about 3.6 just overall. So anything under 5% is good budgeting. You're putting together this budget in May and June. You don't know all of the answers to the puzzle really when you're putting it together. And so really as a board member, I think what that tells you, if you see the variance numbers kind of being smaller like that, under 5%, it tells you that what you're getting from the finance department is really what you can rely on. You can trust that those numbers are accurate and you can make decisions off of those. So I think that's a big and really important thing. So great job on the budget this year. Next slide, please. You got your revenues in your general fund. I did update this slide, so if anybody had it in front of them, I noticed a typo on Friday when I was going back through, so I apologize for that in front of you. But the big thing I just wanted to highlight here, the big blue blob there basically is the money you get from your state. And then about 6.4% comes from property taxes. So about 87% of your funding comes from more or less the state. If you're aware of how state funding works, property taxes and state aid kind of work a little bit hand in hand together with your foundation allowance. And so why do I highlight that? Well, we'll see in another slide here how your revenues have increased significantly over the last couple of years, and all districts have, with your increase in state funding, significant increases in the foundation allowance, categorical grants, ESSER funds. But really, going forward to fiscal year 25, we're seeing now with the new state budget that that's probably not going to be the trend going forward. We're seeing kind of consistent, no increase in the foundation allowance for 2025. That's the first time since 2011 that that's occurred. And so really, I just highlight that for you because we talk about the fund balance. I'll talk about that again a little bit later. And it's really nice to have that big, healthy fund balance right now. But going forward, you're not going to see revenue increases as you have the last couple of years. And if we talk about expenditures in a little bit, my guess is those probably aren't going to decrease for the district, right? They're probably going to stay consistent or increase. So that's kind of where the next level of school finance, I think, is kind of going. A little bit of uncertainty on the funding, but really it's for districts to start deciding, all right, where do we want to start focusing on the fund balance? You know, we've got all these programs we implemented during COVID that the state gave us funds for. Well, where do we want to keep those? And if we're going to keep them, how do we want to fund them? Do we want to eat into fund balance? Do we want to, to maybe seek alternative methods? Although, like I said, the state's kind of cutting back on some of the grants and stuff that they have as well. So I just pose that. I've been posing that to all my school districts this year as kind of the next step, I think, to kind of take a look at and start analyzing for districts. So next slide, please. So you can see 3-year trend, big increases. 2023, a lot of that was due to the ESSER fund. You spent a lot of those last year. This year, the big increase was in the state aid foundation allowance as well as those categorical grants. So if I had to predict the future, I'm not necessarily a fortune teller, but I would anticipate these numbers looking pretty consistent again next year if I had to speculate. So next slide, please. Expenditures, I just wanted to highlight, you spend about 57% of your expenditures on instruction in the classroom. Statewide average last year was just about 57% as well. So you guys are about right on average for what you spend on support versus instruction. So. And then a 3-year trend on your expenditures, again, you can see significant increases in 23 with all of the new ESSER funds, state categorical grants you spent. Did a really good job in 2024 of keeping those fairly consistent. I've seen a lot of districts increase even more in 2024 as they continue to spend more and more grant funds. But again, that's where going next year when those grant funds aren't available, where do we go? Do we keep those programs or do we end up having to get rid of them is kind of the next decision. Next slide, please. Fund balance. I just stuck that in there just to see a big 3-year trend, as I said. Big increase. You guys have done a really great job on increasing fund balance the last couple of years and saving. I think, like I said, I've been working with the district for about 5 years now, and I remember your goal on your board sheet was to get to 10%, and now we're almost close to 30, right? And I saw that you guys have your new goal basically being to keep it healthy so you don't have to borrow from the state. And if you go to the next slide, please. Going as a fund balance comparison, really, I think you guys are fairly consistent with the state. I put some example peer districts, DeWitt and Mason, in there for you. You guys are just about average, or right above them the last year. And like I said, going forward into fiscal year 24, when the numbers come out, I anticipate you being right at or probably a little bit above what the new average is going to be for districts your size. So, next slide. And here's kind of the very top bullet point. really ties into kind of your guys' board goal where you talk about not wanting to borrow from the state. By having that by having that healthy fund balance, you guys are able to not have to borrow from the state aid foundation, which the state aid note last year probably would have cost you about $100,000 historically in years past as interest rates change, then that could change slightly. But by being able to keep the healthy fund balance, you're able to save the district just $100,000 right there. I think in investments this year, you guys earned around, was it about $2 million? Was it or?
On the investments, I think it was about 150,000.
Okay. It was a significant amount of money is how much you guys saved on the investments this year as well, right? So by keeping those balances in the district and having that there, it's a net positive just off of that, about $250,000 or so. So I think that's very encouraging and really nice to see. And then the last two bullet points in there, I won't touch over too much, but just some accounting standards that changed. One change this year didn't have an impact on you. We've got a couple going forward the next couple years. Shouldn't have a significant impact. A lot of it's going to change a little bit of the financial reporting in your financial statements. So, and with that, that was everything I had. So appreciate you guys letting me be here tonight and presenting to you and helping out as the auditors again this year. And I'd be more than happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
This isn't a question for you, so you're good if you'd like to. I just want to remind people that it was maybe, I don't even know how long ago it was, 6 years ago, 8 years ago, when I was on this board. Jeff West was here with me, and there's nothing wrong with that. It was just a difference of priorities, opinion. They were really good at living basically paycheck to paycheck. And when this board kind of turned over, I had learned, and this is when we were in the process of hiring Adam, that if we had a teacher go out on some type of leave and need to use the sick bank, we would not have enough money to make payroll. So, I mean, think about that. If we had a teacher that had to go on maternity leave and we had to hire a sub, we would not have been able to make payroll. And for me, that was startling. Like, I'm not okay living in there. I remember after Adam was hired, we met. I'm not even sure why we met, actually. But I remember saying, I'm not comfortable. And Adam fashion, whipped out a plan of, I'm not comfortable either. And, at that point then the board, when we had our goal setting for our goals, it became apparent that that was kind of everybody's goal. And I would like to thank the due diligence of this board keeping that, but I really would like to thank Adam and Sarah for really, for Adam for kind of just holding the line, saying we're not going to spend money, but go be creative on if you want to do something, I'll support that. If you want to find a grant, if you want to find something, go ask people. He asked people, however that worked. And I'd like to thank Sarah for keeping us in line and doing her wizardry to make us stay where we are. So I think every time we see that this page, I mean, this only went back to 2022. We can go back farther than that, where our line didn't even show up on this graph, barely. So I think we should all,
Yeah, no, I agree.
post this somewhere, put it in a frame, because it was a lot of work, a lot of due diligence. And I'm really proud of where we're sitting. So thank both of you, and thank you for, I mean, I know legally we have to have you, but I mean, you do come in and give us nice books and make it understandable. I've been on the finance committee to understand where we are and where we're going and how things work, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up very good points, that there are three of us that lived through those years of that unsureness. Are we going to, like, we were really close to being a district that was controlled by the state, essentially. Like, the state was going to take over our finances, and we were on that list for many years, and we worked really hard to get off of it. And I'm so thankful that we are where we are now, but we also can't forget that was a really big struggle. And like you said, we said no to a lot of things. And to that other board, I'm sure there were other things that came up that took priority over, some other.
They lived through some hard times too.
Yes, I mean, we never cut funding, we never cut things from classrooms, we, you know, kept programming the way that it was and steady, and so people didn't really know the hardship that this district was going through, and I'm really, really thankful to be on this side of things now.
Well, and for many years, our staff, you know, they
Yeah,
didn't
They
get
didn't
pay
get
raises,
steps,
they didn't
they-
get steps, they
yeah,
kind of
they
hung in
stuck
there
with
with
us,
us,
so
so.
they knew, yeah.
So thank you. Oh,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no,
any
absolutely.
other questions? Adam, anything you want to add? Are you good? You wanna move on? Okay. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Good to see you guys all again.
Thank
You too. All right, next, Dr. Cook.
Nice to see everybody, thank you. Does the clicker work?
I
know
The
that-
clicker works, right?
Well, it did earlier.
It did earlier. Go ahead
Okay,
and try it.
all right, let's see if it does. I don't think it is.
You are
I know,
No.
I wonder if it's me.
It's
Should be
okay,
this
because I know
way.
he tried it, and so
Oh.
that's okay, I'll just say turn the page, how's that? So tonight I'm here to give you an overview of our M-STEP and NWA assessment data to date. Tonight the presentation is going to look a little differently than you've seen it before. So I'm going to highlight the successes and the growth opportunities that we have. It highlights also the so what, the what are we doing to continue our success, and what are we working on to help grow that growth opportunity. Next. So the agenda is, as it reads, the ELA highlights and the school improvement goals, and that's going to be the so what for each. The math highlights, the social studies highlights, and then the school improvement goals for each of those. The science highlights with the school improvement goals, and then at the end, questions or comments. And you're free even while I'm doing this to ask any questions you want. Okay, Dave, can you do that? So as you see on the left side, and this will be for all subjects, we divided it by subjects this year, success and then growth opportunities on the right. In ELA, it was really easy to pick up successes, and there were many because our data looked really good. So on this side, on the left side of the assessment data, you can see that 2nd, 5th, 8th, and 11th grade were all highlighted. They all had successes. We all had growth. On the right side of the slide, it was hard for me to even pick out things that needed to have growth opportunity because we really are doing well overall. But I did highlight the 4th, 6th, and 8th grade in ELA as needing some or having areas that could use some growth opportunities. Go ahead, next slide. So under ELA, for Explore, as you had saw on the slide before, that there was 4th grade that was identified as a growth area. They're doing quite a bit to encourage growth and to continue growth. So what they are doing as opportunities is NWEA data drives our multi-tiered systems of support groups. So we're looking at that and how we divide up our tier program. This is the 3rd year of our ELA curriculum, Bookworms, where they have built in the differentiation block, which focuses on specific area of need for our 3rd and 5th grade students that showed that they needed some support. We had the 23G grant, which provided the opportunity for after-school tutoring, which is highlighted by teachers within our school are teaching our students that are within their classrooms. So it really enhances their individual learning. And then student engagement is the teacher learning together focus. So our TLT, as we call it. At the middle school, they're also addressing growth. They're focusing on Tier 1. They're utilizing our academic overtime, AOT, to specifically address student need in ELA. Staff is analyzing alignment of what is being taught, and the Ingham Intermediate School District, our ELA consultant, is working with the staff. And they support Tier 1 literacy, continuously through strategies that they provide. Go ahead. In math, again, on the left side is successes, on the right side is our growth opportunity. In math, a high percentage of second, third, fourth, and fifth grade students met their growth projection, and our district is really focusing on individual growth, what each student is able to achieve for that year. I would like to highlight fifth grade, who ranked first in the county on MSTEP, and then our SAT score placed us second in the county in the area of math. Though we placed second in the county, as we analyzed our SAT data, it was recognized that our scores, they have been declining over the years. You can see that on the graph it's provided. So that is our growth opportunity for our district this year. Okay. The middle school is implementing strategies to help build a stronger foundation in math. Having the math department analyze and make sure their curriculum is aligned across all math instruction. As in ELA, the academic overtime AOT sessions are providing extra support for targeting math interventions that are needed. And the math department is also looking at NWEA data to identify specific math skills that need to be addressed by the students. At the high school, they are focusing on the following strategies for improvement: alignment of the curriculum, looking at classroom assessments to make sure that they are covering all the standards. If they are not covering the standards, having teachers go back and add that to what they are assessing the students during their semester exams. And looking at the SAT questions and taking the time to link them to the standards. In social studies, as the charts show you, 8th and 11th grade both made gains in proficiency on the social studies M-STEP. A celebration is for the last 2 years we've shown significant improvement at both grade levels. In social studies, our growth opportunity is in 5th grade with a proficiency rate that's below the other 2 grades, the 8th and the 11th grade. Dave, thank you. So explore strategies to improve in the social studies area is in the elementary. We're looking at social studies as an integrated course. It is in literacy instruction as well as standalone. As far as standalone time for our lessons specific, it's hard in the elementary to always get time to focus on social studies as well as science because we look at math and literacy as so important. But when we can, we are very specific about how we teach it, how we enhance our learning within that subject area. So teachers are very thoughtful about the lessons that they put in place. At the high school, the strategies in social studies classes, they're higher level thinking, and it's designed into teachers' lessons and activities which enhance cognitive demand and students' critical thinking. And for students taking advanced social studies, the lessons and activities are thoughtfully designed to enhance their analytical thinking. Here we come to science, a celebration for our 5th grade. It's their science M-STEP. They gained in proficiency from 59%, 59.9 to be exact, in 2023 to 65.70 in 2024. As shown on the graph, our 8th grade proficiency, and that is on the left, on the M-STEP reached an all-time high of 63.70 also. A growth opportunity is in 11th grade due to our decline from last year as evidenced on the graph on the right side. Thank you. So what are we doing the so what in science? The high school strategies to improve science. The science department is looking at the science standards that should be covered in 9th and 10th grade classes to align them and make sure they are being covered so that they support our 11th grade students ready for the M-STEP in their junior year. The science curriculum is focusing on claim, evidence, and reasoning, and that is called CER, which is a 3-step process to help students think efficiently and critically. The steps are first to answer a question with an opinion or an idea statement. Next, they're providing data to support their claim, and then they go on to explain how or why the evidence supports by using a scientific principle or a scientific rule. So it's very specific. And then they use inquiry within labs and simulations to provide students the opportunity to utilize the CER process. Next. Questions or comments?
So back on the ELA slide, you talked about a decrease in both 4th and 6th grade. Have you been able to delve down any deeper to see if there's any common patterns of what is leading to that decline?
No, but I will. I will get back to you on that.
It's very hard to determine patterns every year.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time trying to figure that out, and I don't know if we're ever going to be able to figure out a pattern with the state assessments. I mean, there's just really question, and I can say this because we do well. If we didn't do well, it would be considered an excuse. I just question what's the purpose and the validity of the assessments, because we can't find patterns. You don't get release other than the SAT and the PSAT. You don't get any kind of data or back on the particular types of questions, the rigor of the questions. There's no way to go back and assess, and even if you did, the kids have moved on. So again, it's just we give these tests every year. We talk about the data. You deserve to see that. The community deserves to see it. But I just don't know how much we can really put into some of those, let alone the fact that, again, what's in it for students. And, you know, we don't want to publicize that too much because we want kids to give it their best effort. But I mean, really, you know, I mean, there are some high stakes assessments where there is something in it for them, but for most of these, there's really not. And then how do we action the data? Like, what's the purpose of that? Well, when you can't go back and find patterns, do question analysis, do a cross-examination of the rigor of the questions you're asking and what you're doing in your class as far as your local assessments and your lesson planning. What are we doing here? So that's a bigger policy level issue that the state has to consider. I'm serving on that as the rep for that, for the Tri-County Superintendent's Policy Committee. We'll see if elected officials are interested in engaging in that topic, but it's a long answer to your question, but it's very difficult. What Dr. Cook has discussed, and one of the things that we're trying to pivot in terms of our focus at the district when we analyze data is really looking at NWEA data and analyzing how students are and how many students are reaching their individual growth targets for that academic year. That is something we can actually do something about. So you can look at, and that's the nice thing about the assessment, is it gives you their starting point, wherever that is. And we know kids come in at different levels. And then it suggests where at the end of the year that student should be able to get to. Again, calibrated off where that student's starting at. And then we can monitor the types of instruction and intervention that our educators are providing using our MTSS process to actually leverage those results and work with those students to try to get all of them to that individual growth target, wherever that might be. That's the focus on growth. That's why we're here, right? And just admiring assessment data and how many kids are proficient. You know, again, a lot of that I can predict before the year started, but then looking for patterns year over year, it's very hard to do. So we've really pivoted to looking at that growth target and then really doing our internal analysis, focusing on that because we think that's what matters, not the state assessments.
Adam, how long do you wait before you get the assessment results? Is it within the same school year, or do you?
At the MSTEP or like things like that?
NWEA?
No, we get them in the end of the summer, early fall.
So you can't really use that?
NWA, we get right away. The
Good.
students take the test, and within 24 hours, we can look at their results in
that's great.
NWEA. For the state assessment for MSTEP, right, we don't even
Well,
get it till the end
We get
of
like
the summer.
like an embargoed snapshot of
Yeah.
how they did, but we can't say anything about it, and plus they're already done. So like, what's
Yeah.
the point? Like, you can't go back and, hey, let's sit down and go back over this. Like, you've moved on. Whereas NWEA, you can actually leverage the MTSS model to support those students' growth over the course of an academic year.
Yeah, and that I can look at, Chris, too, is for the 4th, 6th, and 8th grade in ELA, what was their growth in NWEA, because this is like our 3rd or 4th year using that assessment. So I could go back and just generally, I can do it by grade, so where they were, and see if there's a pattern, let you know. That I can do, so, but it's general.
Do those patterns correlate to the state assessments?
So usually not, because that's apples to orange.
Yeah.
It's really different, and it's specific to their, what NWEA is saying, what their growth should be, and that's also based on RIT. If you remember, I talked about the RIT score, and where MSTEP doesn't even, their questions are different, their whole way of norm basing everything is very unique to them, yeah.
So I used to work here or in different schools when they give this test, and it's interesting, it's over multiple days. And, you know, if it's really hot, kids are done with that test really quick.
Yeah, they're just doing
And,
this.
you know, if it's kind of cooler out, they might take a little bit long. Like, so there's so many things that come into play that it is really, I would encourage anyone from the state to come and just, you know, sit in a room and watch the kids take it, because like, you can just kind of predict, like, based on weather, or like, how it
And
is.
you usually see that slump in the
do.
fall as opposed to when they take the NWA in the spring, because there's usually that summer slide is what it's referred to, but.
Part of it too is you
Like-
gotta give kids, I know we're probably getting a little off topic, but again, from a policy perspective, like in 11th grade, you know, junior is taking the science M-step. Why do they care about that? Like what is in it for them? Now you throw a bone at them and say, hey, you know, if you're proficient in science, we'll fund $1,000, you know, tuition reimbursement, or cut you a check for something, you know, because to encourage you to continue on in that field, or something like that. I mean, there's creative ideas, right? We'll give you an opportunity to get some startup capital if you're looking to go to school or start a business. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of creative ideas that could be, if you're really insistent that these tests are a big deal, and that's arguable, then put something in it for students. And that would be interesting to see how that gets responded to. Now, the other question there is you'd want to ensure, because we never see the results, the test questions, you'd want to ensure there's an alignment between the test to the state standards, which there might be, but there also might not be. We don't know, because we don't get to see the test. So that's one of the, other than TSAT, SAT. So I mean, that's just another factor. And again, I feel like I can talk about this openly, because we do well. The state scorecard, which is the big assessment of schools that gets published every year, it's still embargoed, but I can kind of give you a hint tonight. We did very well. So by bringing this up, it doesn't, you know, it's not an excuse for poor performance. It's basically saying, hey, look, even as a high-achieving district, we're clearly noticing that these state assessments are really lacking in a lot of ways, and it's something that I think needs to be considered and looked at. On the flip side, using measures like NWEA during the course of a year, which is a highly regarded assessment that is related to standards, and we can make those connections to, and actually be able to monitor a student's growth over time, and then actually adjust instruction to meet their needs, that actually is accomplishing something. So it's kind of my soapbox on the topic, but
I do have another question.
Sure.
You said in one of the points, you said you needed to determine where the standards we are not currently teaching can be implemented in the curriculum. So why would there be some standards that you're not teaching?
So sometimes, and I know we used to do the SEC, like we'd look at the state standards, and the teachers would take an assessment, And we'd see, are they teaching they're there, but maybe they're focusing too much on something that doesn't belong in that year, or that particular month, or that curriculum. So we are always looking at aligning our state standards with what we're teaching, because we want those two to be pertinent and to be important for that particular course in that year, right? So that's what it means. They need to relook at it and make sure that they're putting their effort into the right standards for that right time.
So I can give you a success story there. So it's not just about teaching the standards, it's also about the level of rigor that the standards expect you to teach it at. And that's the harder part, because you can go in and like cover the baseline pieces, but there are certain standards where they want you to focus in more depth, and there's others where it's less depth. Now again, that should theoretically be correlated back to the state assessment. With PSAT, SAT, it is, because you can go in and look at test questions and you can get enough data based on the previous year's test where you can make some conclusions about whether your local assessments are meeting the level of rigor and covering the standards to the same level of rigor that this assessment is asking students to do. You cannot do that on MSTEP. You cannot. So we don't know, again, that the correlation, but a success story is, as Dr. Cook said, we were using a tool called the Survey of Enacted Curriculum. Now it looks like that tool might not be supported anymore. We're gonna have to go out and look at a different program or a different system for doing that. But what it allowed you to do is put in an analysis of what you taught over the course of a year, and then it would basically kick out an answer and tell you, like, here are the standards you're spending your time on and the amount of rigor that you're addressing them with. And then you could take out the answer sheet, which was, let's just take a high school math example. You could take out the SAT and it would show you, here's where the SAT is going to, here are the standards it's covering, and here's the level of rigor that it's expecting students to know. So hey, are we covering it this way or not? So that's kind of like what Dr. Cook was explaining. It's not just if you're covering the standard, it's how much rigor, how much depth you're putting into those standards. And that analysis is invaluable. So that's one of the things looking at when we talked about depth of knowledge in terms of our local assessments. And of course, once your assessment is planned that way, you backwards plan your unit so that your instruction aligns with what you're expecting the students to know on the assessment, right? So once you have those aligned, your chances of student proficiency are going to be much higher. Success story is our math department at the high school utilizing that Survey of Enacted Curriculum over a number of years, where they started with some variance in terms of their alignment for both standards covered and the level of rigor. And then the last time they did it, they were pretty much spot on in terms of the level of rigor and the alignment to the standards they were teaching to what the SAT was expecting them to students to know. So that was a great win for using that tool to calibrate the alignment of your curriculum. But like I said, we think that tool's going away, so we're going to, as normally happens in education, everything just cycles out. So we're going to have to find some other system to go back and see how we can internally assess the alignment of what we're teaching.
Any other questions or?
Yeah, we must be doing good if we're second in the county for SAT scores, but I'm just curious, do you recall, is there a trend across our local schools that they're all going down?
They're all, excuse me?
Well,
Math
going
score.
down, yeah.
Math score.
Oh, math scores going down?
And
No, I don't believe that. I
Right.
would have to look that up.
No,
I'm
Are
trying to
you,
find that.
maybe I'm not understanding. Oh, for SAT.
SAT.
Are
Yeah.
all the other county schools, is that your question?
yeah.
I can look that up. I
So
do know
I
that,
got it.
you
I
got
it.
that?
Yeah, so generally
Okay.
speaking, I know science, high school science was low, but again, there's a lot of variables for, well, it's not low. It is what it is in terms of the data, but there's a lot of variables for why that could be in terms of the proficiency level. But that's well above the county and state norms, like well above. Math, we're at the SAT level, we're still far above the county and state averages. But it has declined. We've seen some growth in terms of the data I'm looking at in terms of the overall county. Michigan as a state's pretty flat, so we started higher and, you know, it's dropped a little bit, but still, when you look at the, from a comparative context, it's pretty strong.
Okay.
And within M-STEP, because you don't have that here, we were either first, second, or third in most of the grades that we looked at. So that has been consistent between Okemos, Hazlitt, us, Hazlitt, Okemos. So we've stayed very consistent with keeping our rigor and our scores high compared to the other districts, and then everybody else following.
Any other questions?
I love the competition.
Good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very
You're
much.
so welcome.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to superintendent's report.
All right, I have a number of items tonight. Let's see. So the first one, next regular meeting and the last regular meeting for the calendar year will be on December 9th. Just due to the end of the year and the board resetting in January, I'm not anticipating any committee meetings between now and the end of the calendar year. Special meetings, we'll just kind of see how things go. But that's the only scheduled board meeting for the next 2 months. Quick note on enrollment that I thought you might find interesting. So our submitted FTE for the fall was 1,877.92, and we budgeted 1,870. So 77.92 FTE above budget. 7.92 FTE above budget. 77 would be great. Just 7. Yeah, that would be a story. However, the interesting piece is that because our partnerships changed with the parochial schools this year, so we're not supporting St. Mary's, and St. Martha's roughly halved in terms of the support for general education that we're providing to schools. We lost a significant number of FTE as a result of that. However, our core Williamston enrollment is up 34.777 FTE, so call it 35 FTE for this year. So while the numbers are, you know, slightly above budget, which is always a good thing, right? Better than being below. We have actually added more students that are actually here attending school, and the reason it's somewhat flat, a little bit of a gain, is because of the decrease in the parochial enrollment. So again, we know the underlying issues have been we've discussed as ad nauseam regarding how the students are coming here. Typically, they're from outside the district. But the positive news is our core enrollment is up almost 35 FTE. Moving on to the bond update. As announced last week, our first project start date has been finalized, and that'll be the tennis courts at the high school. Those are going to start on May 14th. We found a nice window there between when the soccer, baseball, and tennis seasons have concluded their regular seasons, and some, at least the initial rounds, in some cases of postseason. It takes about 90 days to complete that project, and so between May 14th and hopefully August 14th, when those same fall sports are starting up, we're hoping to have that project completed so there's not additional scheduling issues in the fall, or if there are, maybe there's just some arrangements for that first week, at least for tennis, to have to practice off-site, but we'll just kind of see how that goes. A lot of that project is weather dependent. If we have a dry summer, it'll get done sooner. If it's a really rainy summer, that might extend it a little bit. So, but it's good that we finally have one date for one of the major benchmarks for the bond nailed down, and looking forward to seeing that start. The contract with Chrisman Company is completed as far as our conversations with them and resolving that. We're hoping to get something in writing this week or next, and that should be in your board packet in December. Again, I think it was worth the time invested now, so 3-4 years from now, when the bond's almost done and we're scraping for pennies to try to get everything accomplished, the legwork in terms of putting the right things in the contract now will hopefully set us up for success there in a few years. And then lastly, the topographical site surveys have been completed at all the campuses. Those are a prerequisite to have those completed so that the architectural firm can move forward with the design process for the various bond projects. Last thing I'll note is professional development, which is in your packet from the 1st of November. Just a couple highlights from those by building. So the preschool, unfortunately, had to postpone theirs due to a illness that got several of their teachers and students, and so nothing to report for them. Discovery continued its focus on conscious discipline, and also spent some time on ELA, grade level team planning. Explore did some things with Land School, which, as you might recall, that's a program that allows teachers positive control over student Chromebooks. Now that Explore is one-to-one for student Chromebook access during the day, teachers had requested some more support with how to utilize Land School, so that PD was provided to them. Explore is also focusing on conscious discipline this year, but they're doing it in a different way than Discovery, through a book study, and then also grade level planning. The middle school looked at zones of regulation. Heather Lewis led that PD. That's very familiar to elementary teachers. Heather's been focused on that for a number of years, but it's great to see that continuing to move up with those students so that common terminology exists throughout the district. As we talked about previously, NWEA was a big focus in the middle school. Took a lot of time looking at their NWEA data and actioning that, and then additionally department level work like the other buildings. High school had a pretty heavy PD day, to say the least, focusing on standardized gradings, continuing on board goal 5 with the work on that. They're really getting into some of the deeper conversations around grade weighting to include final exams and what those look like, and then formative versus summative, which is always something that educators have strong valid opinions on, and kind of working through those conversations. And Dr. Cook also spent some time with them focused on special education and how that plays out in general education classrooms. So a lot going on that day. It was a very busy but effective day of professional development. Pending that, that concludes my report, unless there's any questions.
All right, moving on. Board committee reports, finance.
Finance Committee met on October 28th and spent a large portion of it speaking with Mr. West, that you all heard him speak. The report today, we went much more in depth, but we got a good overview today. We also got an update from Sarah on the sinking fund and where we are at with that, as well as our MI class investments. And that's doing very well. We continue to see very high returns from that, and those returns are getting reinvested. It's been a very good project for the district, or a very good investment, I should say, for the district. We did have a brief conversation, starting to have a conversation about talking about the scoreboard at the football track complex. And we did ask some questions based on that, and really was just kind of a place for finance to start thinking about, do we want to move forward with looking at updating the scoreboard at the high school football and track through some different means. So there are ways to finance it and other types of options. So nothing tangible right now for the board, but it was a starting conversation there. We did have an update on the bond, and one of the things that we did talk about was that over the next few months, we're going to start getting quite a few bids that are going to be coming to the board. And one thing that the Finance Committee would like to propose is that we have asked legal counsel about this, and it is possible for us to do this, is that for these bids that we're going to be getting, that we allow the bids to go through discussion and voting on the same day. The reason for that is that we are paying Crispin to do the due diligence of bringing the best bid to the board. And what is different there is when we typically have gone through these purchases in the past, we've asked our administrators to do that due diligence and bring us 3 different options, to look at the options, to discuss those options, to think about them, and then vote the next meeting so that we have the time to review them. As we go through the bond process, Chrisman is doing that work for us. We're paying them to do that. And for some of our meetings, there's a bit of time in between all of these, and the more time that we have to wait could hold up moving forward with a project. So the Finance Committee would like to propose that through this bond period, as we are under contract with Chrisman, that we take those bids from them and discuss them on the same day and vote on them on the same day as they come forward. And I don't know if there's any questions on that. Or Adam, did I miss anything?
No, I mean, Chris, and as was mentioned, Frederick Heidemann, who was here last meeting from Troon, kind of outlined some of the bond sale pieces and the contract with French Associates. This is his recommendation as well because, as was noted, Chrisman has an obligation to bring aboard the lowest responsible bidder for each of the items that are getting bid out for a given project. And the responsible caveat is there because the bidder has to be able to demonstrate or has demonstrated through their track record the ability to actually do the job. So you just can't, I know how to, I'm a carpenter. Right, yeah, like it's actually got to be a legitimate entity, subcontractor, et cetera. So they already are doing that work for us. So there's arguably really nothing else to do with that other than make sure it's reviewed. And again, the board would still retain its ability if you made a motion to approve a bid and somebody had a really strong feeling about it or wanted additional information, you could always table that and bring it back a second meeting. But just due to the quantity and the speed that these things are going to be moving at, that's the advice so our projects don't get held up when we already know the best possible offer for that service or material is being presented to the board by Chrisman.
So if I'm remembering correctly, to do this bidding process, there are some legal things and that they have to follow. So they, have to go through that whole process to bring us a bid. That's correct?
Correct.
So we also, when we voted to go with Chrisman, part of their job was to do this. So we kind of already have said, we've already kind of had that discussion and said, yes, you're gonna do this and bring us those bids. So I think, I'm okay with this. I would like though, I think everybody kind of think about it. If you have questions, get with either Chris or Adam or Sarah, whoever, to get those questions answered. But I do think I would like to make this, if we're going to do this, to make it a little bit more official than just kind of talking about it and kind of coming to a verbal agreement for 2 reasons. One, there was a time where we would have people, whether it was a trip or whatever it was, they kind of forgot and didn't submit anything, and then they did, and we had to set aside the rules and get it through quickly, and we really kind of put a kibosh to that, saying we're not doing that. And setting aside the rules is, I despise doing that. So I don't want to send a message that we're doing that now, even though we're talking about this. So I don't know if the next meeting, or if this is something we can be ready in January, I don't even know what it would be. Is it an amendment or something that we can kind of just put out in writing and vote on, that we're all in agreement that this is what we're gonna do?
So I would propose I could write a recommendation memo outlining the specific conditions in which this would be done in the context of the bond. I also want to be clear, this is going to be different from when administrators are bringing the board bond proposals, which should still take the 2 meetings, right? So, and we are doing that. We're trying to save money by doing some of that ourselves. So, for example, band instruments, classroom furniture, you know, there's gonna be things like that that, we're just maybe some of the maintenance and facilities equipment. We're gonna go out and get the bids, we'll work through that process and present that to the board. And in that case, you would still use your same process. But when instances where Chrisman is already bringing the lowest responsible bidder through the bidding process, and we've compensated them for running through all those hoops that they have to go through, that would be the exception. So I would just outline that, and then the board could adopt that as normally is done with any other proposal.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. And I'm thinking this is big stuff, like, I don't know,
Electric.
roofing,
It's
windows.
big, but there's gonna be
Steel.
a lot of
Brick,
things.
like
coming.
whatever.
A lot of stuff.
To build a building.
The only other thing on our agenda was our discussion item for tonight, which was on staff bonuses. So we'll be discussing that in just a moment.
Okay, and can I ask, didn't we, when was the last time the football track scoreboard was replaced? I feel like we did
Has it
that
ever been replaced, Abby?
recently, no?
I'm sure it's been replaced, I mean, but it's coming up to the end of its lifespan, and it's, I think, good at this point to be forward-thinking about, it's a significant expense to replace.
So it's not like something we did 2 years ago?
No, what happened recently, it was one of the,
Yeah, soccer.
Soccer.
Your soccer a couple
well, we
years
did scoreboards in
Oh,
basketball, the volleyball,
Oh,
basketball,
gym.
wrestling,
Maybe that's
that
what I'm
was
thinking.
updated,
Yeah,
but
softball.
softball got a new scoreboard, yes.
I don't remember.
Okay.
And actually, so did baseball through the boosters, so, anyway, so there's been some scoreboards, but this one is probably the most expensive one. One of the recent power outages we had last year, when the power came back on, it fried a bunch of the internal components. We were able to replace those, but it's coming up on the point, you know, it might not be next year, but it could be the year after that. At some point soon, it's gonna need to get replaced. And it also aesthetically just, it's doesn't match the rest of the facility in a lot of ways. So, what we're looking at doing is finding it's exploration, but we're looking at using a third party that specializes in targeted fundraising, that would go out and seek businesses who are interested in advertising that would offset or potentially even cover all or the bulk of the costs of that replacement. Now, that might not work out, but it's worth trying versus just paying for it all ourselves. So we're in the exploratory stages of that. I would anticipate if that continues to kind of gain some momentum, we'll bring that back to the board for some further conversation. One of the things that's important is before anything is signed, that the board has the autonomy to make a decision in terms of how much money you want to spend, what type of, you know, what kind of scoreboard would you like to purchase. Are you going to get the scoreboard with a video board, base scoreboard, a new sound system? So there's lots of options that you can consider. But we're looking at, you know, some creative ways that cost could potentially be reduced. So more to follow on that.
The track boosters or the football boosters, like,
So
you said we'll put in a certain amount?
Yeah, I mean, and that could be part of what we explore. The other piece is, regardless of what type of scoreboard we go with, there's also going to be a substantial amount that needs to be spent for installation that would not be covered through any type of potential fundraiser. And so that's maybe something where you could go to boosters too and say, you know, is this something you could, you know, help us out with? And we've done some models like that in the past, like I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, we worked with track boosters to kind of group up and cover the resurfacing of the track. And so that was a nice collaborative project between the district and the boosters. So there's options, but like I said, we're still kind of exploring what that might look like. And then any agreements we get, we'd run through legal counsel to make sure they're meeting our intent, and then kind of come back to the board and keep you updated.
All right, any other questions for finance? All right. Busy time. Okay, next, ISOA. Sarah.
We met last week at the Wilson Talent Center, and we received an in-depth tour from the program director as well as the principal of the Wilson Talent Center. We started in cosmetology and we went through every single program that was there on campus, and we ended with educational careers. And what you'll see in the board packet is a breakdown of each program, but within that, a breakdown of each district and how many students we have within each program there, as well as the second page, a 5-year average, and you'll see that increase from 5 years ago, only 780 students, to now being 956 students that are enrolled in the Wilson Talent Center. So I know that we have many students within the program, in fact, 88 students to be exact. Within multiple programs, I think we have at least one student within each program that the Wilson Talent Center has. So there's definitely been an increase in the number of students, not only within our district, but other surrounding districts within the ISD that send their students to the Wilson Talent Center. And we also received a little bit of a history of when the ISD formed their, it was 1968 is when this came about. They had a bond that came through, and at that time, Lansing School District wasn't involved, and they technically still are not involved with this. They've opted out because they had their own program at the time that was thriving and doing well, and so they stuck with that. And doesn't mean that they don't have students there. In fact, they have many students. Lansing School District has 51 students, but because they are not in with the Wilson Talent Center, the bond, any programs that are not at full capacity, then they can look at Lansing School District students to become within those programs. So, Jason said we have a waiting list for most of the programs that are offered, so there's definitely been a huge interest. And I'll just pass around the program guide as well as the student success guide that we received as well. That's all.
I think in the spring, the Wilson Talent Center does an open house.
Yes,
And you
they
can
do.
go in and
It's very early on in this spring semester.
springtime,
Yep.
yeah, but they kind of like, I went once and they the students would take your blood pressure, or they had.
It's very fascinating.
Yeah, they had volunteers who were getting their hair cut. I mean, and kind of show you the different things they're doing. And I would encourage anyone, when that happens, if I get a notice, I'll let you know, because it is really, it's interesting and fabulous what they're doing. I also commend them for looking at programs that maybe aren't as a need and kind of switching things up. Like I know recently they added the cybersecurity has been a new one,
Yep.
I don't know, within the last
I
couple of
mean, you
years
can
and stuff
take a
like that.
tour whenever. I would suggest reaching out to Jason, and they are more than
Yeah,
excited to
showing
give
off
you a
their
tour.
stuff.
And if you want to get your hair cut, you can make an appointment. Anybody can make an appointment to go get their hair cut.
Or a manicure, or,
A sports medicine, it was really, I mean, you walk in some of those classrooms, and a sports medicine is like going to a physical therapy office. Like, it is set up like that, what you would see. Same with, what is it, one of the probably health foundations, like it's literally looks like a hospital. Like, they have hospital beds, so it's, what they do there is really, really amazing what you can get in 10th, 11th, 12th.
it is, and I
Yeah.
think the misconception is, these kids, and it is, some of these are trades, and some of
Mhm.
these kids go off and get jobs right away. But some of them take this talent and go on or this knowledge and
Yep.
go on to college.
Yep.
There's a big percentage of them.
Yep.
I think it's pretty amazing. Out of our school, we have 88 kids attending there. And I
Yeah.
think it grows a little bit every year.
Absolutely, yep.
Very cool. Any other questions for Sarah? All right, moving on to discussion item. Do you want to take that, Adam? The holiday bonus?
Yeah, so after discussing with the Finance and Facilities Committee, making a recommendation that due to the very positive financial results of the last fiscal year, which the board heard earlier this evening, and the overall collective success of the district, that the board issue a one-time holiday bonus to staff as outlined in the memo next month. Happy to answer any questions on the logistics or rationale.
Do you know, we've given out several holiday bonuses through the years. So what, is this like year 5, year 2, 3, 4?
It's
What-
it's varied. I mean, some years it's been done,
Yeah.
some years we do other things.
We
and
did do a holiday bonus last year, but the winter before we did, same amount, I believe.
Oh, we did something last year, though. I thought we gave some.
there's been a number of different bonuses and different ways that that's been allocated, I guess, depending on how you want to look at it over the years. I mean, I'm proud to say that I think our district kind of, at least in the education realm, we're one of the trendsetters in recognizing success in education with doing something like this before it became trendy during COVID. And so I think the results that our staff have produced are speak for themselves, and obviously not every year we're in a fiscal position to be able to do this, but based on the results of the audit, I feel comfortable making this recommendation, or at least seeking your support for it.
And this isn't going to put us too much in a hole.
One piece I guess I'll point out too is it's always been a challenge. It's challenging to try to get the word out that these are board initiated. Many of these that have come out throughout the years have been board initiated, board proposed. So we put some little clauses in there just to try to come up with a way to make sure everybody receives the message that the board recognizes and appreciates their efforts, and that's why this is being done. So we kind of experimented with this over the years. We've done everything from emails to letters to announcements to, I think we did a video.
I did a video one year.
Yeah, it's still
I'm
kind
not
of
sure
hit or
we get
miss
it.
if we hit everybody and if folks actually understand where this came from. So this is just a different method, and we'll see if this sticks.
Any questions on this? We're all comfortable moving this to vote on the 9th? All right. Moving into action items, can I have a motion to approve our consent calendar?
Make a motion that the Williamston Board of Education approve the minutes for the regular meeting held on October 21st, 2024, and the special meeting held on November 4th, 2024, as presented.
I second it.
Okay, so first Chris, second Deb. Any other discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. We do have a roll call vote to approve contract for French Associates.
Make a motion that the Williamston Board of Education approve the architectural contract with French Associates Incorporated as presented.
Second.
I heard Dave, so I'm gonna do first Chris, second Dave. Any other discussion? Okay, so this is kind of an important one. We are all comfortable. I want to make sure everybody is comfortable moving forward with this. Okay. Amanda, can you take us through roll call, please?
Amanda, yes. Chris?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And Nancy?
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Nice. Sorry, I'm doing my notes quickly. Okay, can I have a motion for our separate action items? The first, board policies to be added.
I make a motion that the Williamston Board of Education add the following policies: 3570, disbursements, and 5670, employee ethics and standards, time and effort reporting.
Second.
So that was first Sarah, second Dave. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, may I please have a motion to approve policies that have been revised?
Make a motion that the Williamston Community Schools Board of Education revise the following policies: 4015, insurance programs; 4250, district use of copyrighted materials; 5202, social media; 5235, nepotism; 5245, political activities; 5357, family and medical leave; 5650, tutoring for pay; 5695, ethics; and 8580, child abuse as presented.
I second it.
Okay, so I have a first, Chris, second, Deb. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Can I please have a motion for board policies that were removed?
Move that the Williamson Community Schools Board of Education move the following policies: 5202-R, social media contact, and 5230, conflict of interest, and 5645, consulting, as presented.
Second?
Okay, so first Dave, second Sarah. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. So we have our board goals. We did not get any correspondence at this time. Any citizen comments? Okay. Any board member reports and requests?
Just that, I believe it's Saturday, December 7th, the PTSA puts on the Pancakes with Santa. I believe it's that day, as well as the light parade that night.
Schools Foundation.
Foundation.
Oh, I'm sorry, Foundation, not the PTSA. Thank you, Williamston Schools Foundation. And then I believe the Williamston Light Parade is later that evening.
I think it is.
Yes.
I also just want to take a minute to again thank Sarah and Betsy and anyone that had part of getting all the materials together for the audit and working with them and going through that. It's always nice to get a glowing report. So nicely done. And I'd like to wish we will not meet again until Thanksgiving. So I'd like to wish all of you a happy Thanksgiving. Hope you get to have some time off, spend it with your family, friends, and enjoy. Anything else? Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
So I have first by Chris, second by Deb. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good evening, everybody. Thank you.